Hello, folks, and welcome to the 2025 Handies. Just kidding. The Handies are coming, of course, but while I tackle the monumental task of assembling all of our audio and all of our edits, I present to you a wonderful conversation I had with friend of the show, Ryan Wagner, about wrestling, its place and its future in the sport of MMA, which I had to do quite a bit of audio engineering to salvage over the last couple weeks due to some recording issues on my end. So I hope you enjoy the show. Big thanks to Ryan for coming on and for his patience waiting for his episode to actually appear. Now, enjoy Heavy Hands and sit tight. The Handies are coming, and so am I. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I am your host, as always, Connor, and with me, for the first time in, I think since 1978, we have an esteemed guest. It's Ryan Wagner.
Hey guys, I was going to do the accent and pretend to be Phil, but I didn't want to embarrass myself.
Okay. I thought you were about to pretend to do a German accent. Since I don't know when that started.
No, that would be too accurate. I don't want to scare you guys.
Yeah. Phil started it. Phil, years ago, just started always saying Ryan Wagner. And
I thought that was just how the English pronounce it.
That maybe it is. Ooh, maybe I've been embarrassing myself. I've been like, oh, we're doing a fun accent, and he's just, you know, like how they say pasta? They just don't know how to pronounce German names. I
wouldn't put it past them. They don't seem to know how to pronounce English names.
Well, yeah. I'm going to go get some tacos with my friend Ryan Wagner. Welcome back to the show after a long time, Ryan. I'm very happy to have you here.
I'm happy to be here. It has been quite a while. I had to bully myself back on it. One of our friends, he asked you guys something on Twitter, and in the comments I was like, they should have me on to talk about this.
Yeah, what was that? It would be helpful if either of us could remember what that was. Maybe we could talk about it like they wanted.
It was like 3 whole days ago, man. I don't know.
It was more than 3 days ago. I think it was like a week and a half ago. It's Christmas time. Things move slow and strange and confusingly. But you did just write an excellent piece on your Substack, which is called Mixing Martial Arts. Is that right? mixingmartialarts.substack.com?
mixingmartialarts.com.
Just .com. Oh shit.
Yes.
I did type it in with the .substack and it worked.
That still works, yeah. We got a custom domain now.
Wow. Well, you wrote this fantastically long and detailed piece about takedown entries and setups, and you really covered the entire spectrum of how takedowns work in MMA. And you know a great deal about wrestling, Ryan, compared to me anyway. And I thought we could talk about wrestling in MMA.
I'd love to. Yeah, I one thing I've been lamenting for a long time is that open space wrestling seems to be kind of disappearing.
Yes.
And I don't like that because it's super fun to watch people hit like a really smooth double leg or a really clean entry, and it's kind of lame to watch them push someone back to the fence and then just kind of like duck in on the hips, lock their hands together, and another takedown.
Yeah. And that coincides with another trend, at least it seems to for me, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, which is that wrestling in general sort of seems to me to be less prominent in MMA than it was. Certainly we have in the UFC fewer American wrestling prospects and Canadian wrestling prospects than we did like a decade ago. It used to be one of the most reliable bases of talent for the UFC to poach and for MMA in general. And I think it seems pretty self-evident that like MMA is more of a striking sport than ever before.
Yeah.
And the striking has gotten better. That's the upside. Now, of course, there are still lots of things. I don't know if you know this, Ryan, but I have been obsessed for the last like 2 months. Every time I watch an MMA fight, and I'm noticing that orthodox strikers are constantly circling to their weak side. They're always circling to the right when that's like the awkward, unnatural way to move. And I think in general, like footwork still has a very long way to go for striking.
Yeah.
But the people at the cutting edge have really excellent boxing footwork that works beautifully and much better than like the best technical strikers of 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. And it just seems that the takedown is, you know, all the sport killers are gone. The sport killed them, it turns out.
Yeah, I think that is largely true. There's particularly with the like American wrestling meta that you're talking about. Nowadays, you see a lot of the Dagestani wrestler types,
of course,
but
yeah.
they fight very differently. And I think that with the level of striking is really important there too. I think not even at the top end only, but throughout all the levels of MMA, even on the regional scenes, people are getting a lot better at boxing. Even the ones who have very messy footwork and positioning, they can jab. They know some basic counterpunching. If you look at the heyday of wrestlers, of the American wrestler in like 2009, so much of what they were doing was beating up guys who were very rudimentary in either one or both phases.
Yeah.
And I think that wrestling kind of almost acted as a cheat code that allowed them to skip over building depth into their games.
Totally. I mean, it was a true meme for a long time, right? The like wrestler learns an overhand right.
Yeah.
Instantly becomes a top 10 fighter in his division.
Yeah. If you look at guys like John Fitch, Uriah Faber, a lot of what they were doing is kind of patching over very obvious flaws with either simple mix-ups and athleticism with Uriah, or Fitch would just kind of avoid the striking entirely or slop through it until he could get a takedown.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays, that's a lot harder to do. And I think that they're kind of they seem to be building their games similar to how they were back then, whereas it's not working as well now.
Right.
And the wrestlers that do excel are the ones who are going to do something different. They're a little bit deeper in a certain phase. Maybe they have a more coherent game that doesn't just rely on the first layer transitional attacks.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, yeah, it was kind of something that allowed them to patch over building depth into their games, where if you're a striker who doesn't learn how to prevent his opponent from taking the fight to spots where they want, or to how to make your attacks coherent,
mm-hmm.
then you drown very quickly. You don't really rise to that level. And wrestlers could get away with that for a long time where they can't now.
Yeah.
I think a few of the things that explain that, the improved striking that we're talking about is one, I think. It's
Mm-hmm.
harder for people to get easy entries. In 2009, if you're fighting someone like, I don't know, Sam Stout,
Mm-hmm.
Spencer Fisher, guys that are like respectable, reliable gatekeepers that had long UFC careers and were quite good, it wasn't that hard to get like a wild punch to shoot underneath on them.
Right.
You could feint around a bit, throw out a throwaway jab, and draw a wild right hand and get an easy reactive takedown.
Right. Maybe just hold the distance and wait for them to overcommit sometimes,
yeah.
Right?
Now, a lot of the time, even when you're fighting someone who's not that good, they just won't do that. They'll take small steps and fill up the space. They'll feint back at you.
Right.
They won't give up their hips so easily. So if you want to get those same entries now, you have to go like a layer deeper, and less wrestlers are capable of doing that nowadays, I feel like.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Like a lot of MMA skill sets, I think, can be understood in that way. That like the average MMA fighter will simply learn as much as he has to.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of Band-Aid application in like MMA skill development, where you will sort of just learn how to nullify entry points into other phases, for example. Get good enough at that you don't have to deal with it very often, and that's all you have to learn. And I think it makes a lot of sense that part of the reason wrestling doesn't seem to play the role that it once did in high-level MMA is that now, to be an effective wrestler, you also have to actually raise your level of striking. You have to develop a real understanding of range and positions and, setups and how to gain the initiative. You have to be able to strike in order to, and I've been talking about this probably since I started talking about MMA at all. The many connections between the techniques of wrestling and boxing. A lot of things like footwork and positioning, they translate pretty one-to-one.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as you say, for a long time, wrestlers, it might seem like an obvious entry into developing a good enough boxing game, but what qualified as good enough for 10 years ago does not seem to be good enough anymore. You actually have to, look at Islam Makhachev. He may not have the exact American wrestling style we're talking about. His wrestling approach is very typical of a lot of the Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov fighters, but he is hitting beautiful, clean takedowns all the time, and I think it has something to do with the fact that he is a genuinely good striker.
Yeah.
He has good footwork, he has a jab, he understands how to feint, he has defense. All of these things actually make it possible for him to get into positions against basically anyone to hit spectacular, clean takedowns. Or at the very least to get into his incredible chain wrestling sequences.
Islam's a really interesting one because I think a lot of the way a lot of the best wrestlers do their entries is that they establish some kind of threat on the feet that leads right into the takedown entry. Merab Dvalishvili, I don't know how to say that name. I never say it out loud.
Dvalishvili, that was right.
Okay.
As right as I am when I say it, so.
Yeah, we could both be butchering it, but I'll go with that.
From one idiot to another. I think you did it good.
Right. But he's very good at that. He has a couple basic threats, and they lead right into his takedown entries. So he has the really long right hand from out of range, where he does that Fedor thing, crashing forward with his rear hand.
Yep.
Then using that to bring his rear leg forward with it and enter into a head and side single leg. And then when he's fighting a southpaw, he'll just reach down and grab their lead leg, and he'll slap it while he's throwing an overhand. And he'll do that like 10 times, and then on the 8th or 9th one, he'll just pick up the leg, and he gets a single when they're not expecting it now.
Right.
So I think that's the easiest way to do entries, where you establish a threat that leads right into the penetration step.
Yeah.
Islam is interesting because, like the rest of the Dagestani crowd, he doesn't really shoot from close enough to do that reliably. Instead, he relies a lot on, like what you were saying, the kind of game sense thing, where he'll keep the fight at range, distract you with jabs and kicks, and then pick his spots very well when you're not expecting it.
Right.
And they do that. There's something I talked about in my article on takedown entries. They always enter on a split step.
Yeah.
So where someone like Merab will shoot his right hand forward and then step his rear leg in, they take a short hop in the air and widen their base. It's like in tennis, if you've ever watched a tennis game, before they get ready to return the serve or when the other guy hits it back. I don't know tennis terminology. They'll like jump in the air and then like split their legs apart a bit, and it's so they can pick which leg lands first and launch off of it.
Now,
get momentum to go whichever way they need.
Now remember, Ryan, I am American, so you're going to have to explain to me, what is tennis again?
I don't know very much myself, honestly.
But
I've never watched it, but that's something they do a lot.
But yeah, you wrote about Islam and Khabib. They tend to shoot. Their default shot is one where they do not have to change stance. And it is essentially
gets them low and shoots them forward at the same time.
Yeah.
So they can do it from outside without suffering the usual penalty like telegraph and speed that you would typically.
It's a straight up penetration stamp with the lead leg being the one to penetrate. And to go back to the idea of all of these kind of basic principles of striking and wrestling transferring, it is, as you wrote, functionally identical to the step you would take to bring your right hand onto line with the opponent.
Yeah.
So it blends very naturally into a striking game. That's what fascinates me so much about Islam, is that there's a very like zero-sum appropriate quality to his game, which is that his moves are good whether he's going to hit you with takedowns or not. His positioning is good. If the takedowns do not materialize, he will simply outstrike you. Umar Nurmagomedov is another guy that I think has this quality, as we saw, for example, in his fight with Corey Sandhagen, where he just has solid positional footwork. He can pivot and use the space of the octagon and work you with jabs and make you work twice as hard to try to get in or to try to cut him off and close him down. And so even if the takedowns aren't there, it's just a good functional striking process. But because it's simply a good functional striking process, having the takedowns as an option, it just makes them that much easier to get to. They come right out of the same positions that you would use to dominate somebody from range.
Yeah, that their comfort in exchanges too is a huge benefit there.
Yeah.
In the Sandhagen fight with Umar that you mentioned, he was using some really nice inside angle setups. So they were like southpaw and orthodox, and Sandhagen would try and step outside his lead leg.
Right.
And a lot of times that's your cue to retreat, get out of range because he's trying to hit you with something. Umar would just step in and accept the inside angle and then surprise him with the takedown. Yeah. And that let him hit some tricky shots on Sandhagen's rear leg.
Yeah. And when he wasn't surprising him with the takedown, he was running him into the jab.
Yeah.
The jabs, I should say, because he was doing it from both southpaw and orthodox, which is very impressive. So yeah, to get back to the difference between, like, would you say that Merab has technically a style which is more typical of the wrestlers of the past?
I think he has a style that's typical of the very good ones. He's one that I think does it very well, whereas most of the people that we're talking about, the ones that are kind of like never rise to that higher level and don't really figure out how to blend their striking and wrestling, his open space entries are very, very good, I feel.
Right.
And that's the main thing I think is missing from a lot of them, that they don't establish coherent weapons that go along with whatever takedowns they want to shoot. Whereas Merab's, every takedown that he likes, his little like outside reach where he grabs the leg and then goes into a single leg, or hits a knee tap, or his head inside single leg, they all fit very well with one of the few tools that he has in striking.
Right.
But the typical like level change overhand right thing doesn't really fit in the same way, where Merab's weapons carry him right into the shot. That's just kind of like relying on a first layer mix up. And if the opponent isn't just gobsmacked at like, oh, is he going to level change or is he going to hit me? Then it doesn't really go anywhere else.
Right.
But you can, of course, build that into more of a game, set up other offense off of it, and then come back to it. But if it's just that one layer thing, then somebody who's very good, especially someone who's like very good on the feet, comfortable inside, and perceptive, isn't going to keep falling for that.
And
I think nowadays,
Russian
even like mid-level
perhaps,
and regional talent, a lot of the times kind of fits that bill.
Yeah. Not to say that any random regional fighter could beat Merab, but what I'm trying to get at is that, like, I think that fight with Petr Yan is instructive for understanding the place of wrestling and MMA as a whole. Because there's a lot of ancillary things that have to happen, I think, for Merab's style to be as effective as it is. One of them, obviously, is the seemingly boundless gas tank. Which means that he just has compared to literally any other fighter, he has a much higher margin for error. That all the shots do not have to be that great. The setups don't all have to be that great. Yeah. As long as he can keep getting entries, the game will start to unfold. And the opponent will start to break. So his stamina makes his game work, particularly in his last few performances, even including the first couple rounds against Yan. The pressure also makes it work. If the opponent is already grappling with this switch up threat, so if you just keep them under constant pressure, they are going to be much worse at answering the switch ups correctly. And so Merab, with just generating a ton of initiative and being able to hold on to it by pouring energy into that initiative, that makes the game work, I would say, maybe more than the technical aspects of it do. Like, it's structurally, I think, a pretty simple game. The sort of the connection between his striking and his wrestling.
Merab's broad game is also hampered by the fact that he's not really doing anything on top. I think if he had the kind of skill set that let him find one or two takedowns around, what he does in the feet would be great for that. But since he has to keep shooting over and over again, and there's a lot more failure points there, and his setups get a lot more predictable.
That's a good point. Yeah. But what we definitely saw from Merab, and obviously it took, I mean, who knows? Maybe do you have any feeling that Petr Yan performance has in any way, like, unlocked a route to victory for fighters not named Petr Yan? Because I still look at it and think, holy shit, I know how good Merab is. I know how hard it was to do that, to maintain that focus, and be that consistent, and to fight that well when you're clearly tiring out halfway through the fight.
Yeah.
Is there any blueprint there that other fighters can follow, or do you think that's just Petr Yan is, of course, already brilliant at a base level and also had the fight of his life?
I think the biggest thing to take from that is that Yan found a way to give the same reaction for both of Merab's threats. So when he did a long right hand or shifted into his single leg, Yan would do the same thing. He would stick him with the jab and or duck down low and get his shoulder in front of it. And it worked for both of those.
Right.
If you can't do something like that, that allows you to ignore a lot of the information Merab is feeding you, then I don't think that same path to victory is there. And that also assumes that they have the depth to keep up in the wrestling like Yan did.
Right.
I think that's going to be really tough for anyone to replicate.
Yeah. I do still have a suspicion that it is at least possible for Umar to do something similar.
Oh, I think Umar could definitely win. I think their first fight even was extremely close and could have easily gone the other way with a couple different exchanges here and there.
I agree. Yeah. And a big part of it not going the Umar's way was kind of optics. They're not even the kind of optics where you can say this is all a smokescreen. Like, Umar did look, there's no denying, he looked really shaky pretty soon into that fight. Nonetheless, he kept it crazy competitive and close. And so maybe just that's the guy in the division who could copy paste Petr Yan's approach a bit.
Yeah.
Don't try to push your
him.
own wrestling quite so much. Don't have the whole fight be Petr Yan's, what was it, the second or the third round when he was like, he got really into the idea of hitting his own takedowns on Merab, and I thought everything was going pear-shaped. That maybe Umar, just without pressing his own wrestling so arrogantly, so aggressively, could could simply keep Merab stuck in that phase where, as we saw with Pyotr, like, this is what I'm getting at. Dustin Poirier, for example, had a really great fight against Islam Makhachev. He was remarkably successful at shutting him out of the wrestling for a lot of that fight. Another guy, like, if Pyotr Jan versus Merab 2 was the fight of Jan's life, I think that might have been the fight of Dustin Poirier's life, even though he lost.
Yeah.
Just a really great late career performance. But what happens when you trap Islam in the striking is he just outstrikes you. Like, yeah. And if he succeeds in outstriking you, the takedowns will start to happen again. That's not,
he's also
I don't think that's the case for
much
Merab.
More, a much sharper transitional fighter. Like a lot of what Merab does, he really relies on those initial entry mix-ups.
Right.
And if those are solved, then there's not a lot of depth. There's not a lot of places you can go to adjust. Whereas Islam just has a more organic sense of what openings are available and how he can hit you. And I think that's kind of a useful principle here, that the guys who rely on those mix-ups to set up takedowns, I think they work very well. But if you can solve that, if you can figure out a way to use the same reaction for both and not end up where you're overreacting to the feints or the strike and setting yourself up for the takedown, then that kind of shuts them out of it and it's up to them to adjust. And I think whereas Islam, I think his way of finding takedowns is like less, not less consistent, but less available. Like if you really need a takedown right now, I think he's probably a lot worse at finding it, but he doesn't have the same way of getting just locked out of it.
Right. Yeah, because of that connectivity. The striking game will always make takedowns available. Because he's putting himself in good positions. He's closing the distance on people. He's getting them to react to his jabs and his feints, these threats that are supposed to be readily available, on the feet. And, I think Merab's game is, of course, it has the possibility of being more dominant even than Islam's when it's clicking, but it seems thinner, more fragile. It's spread a little more thin.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Another reason I think that this type of fighter, the American wrestle boxer, has declined a lot is also to do with the grappling meta. Nowadays, everyone wants to turn over and wrestle up, and we've seen top players respond by either becoming back takers, like Aljamain Sterling, Pantoja, or we have the Dagestani style cage riders, where they use the folk style control positions to keep guys down on the cage.
Right.
We don't really have a lot of open space like BJJ players that excel there. And I think that's a big part of why it's such a struggle to play that kind of game. If you look at the old wrestlers, even guys like GSP, like if you could turn belly down and force GSP to take your back, you were standing up soon. Even Dan Hardy ended up on top of him from giving up the back.
That's true. So what's the solution to that then?
What's that?
What's the solution to that then? Give me a roadmap for wrestlers to develop the kind of top games they need to stop. I know if I had Ben Cohn on here, he would be like laughing through his nose about, I remember talking to him, for example, about how consistently MMA fighters are able to just kind of tripod out of back takes.
Yeah.
And he's like, in jiu-jitsu, you just get killed for that. Like, it just doesn't work. So what's the
how unfortunate that jiu-jitsu doesn't work in MMA.
Yeah, that's that. That's the real
Would be lovely if it actually worked, wouldn't it?
Actually doesn't work in jiu-jitsu. On the other hand, jiu-jitsu is fake. So yeah, go on.
Yeah, I think that a big part of the problem is that the skill sets don't really like go along with each other naturally. Guys aren't learning to be great at holding someone down in open space while they're learning to be very good at taking people down. So back in like 2009, the heyday of the American wrestler, or wherever you want to say that was, the jiu-jitsu back takers were mostly not that great. You had some excellent fighters like Maya, but a lot of them were pretty bad at taking guys down, and it just didn't work against elite fighters.
Formiga, he was one.
Yeah. nowadays and that was because the wrestlers that would come in would learn to wrestle, do their overhands, and they'd get some basic ground and pound on top, maybe a passing progression, but they just weren't developing the skill sets to keep and hold backs, and the back takers weren't learning how to be elite wrestlers.
Right.
Nowadays, people are focusing on that a little bit more, so you're starting to see some better wrestlers who are also very good in the back. Aljamain Sterling, I think, is one of the best examples.
Mm-hmm.
There's not too many fighters he can't take down, and once he gets the back, that's probably the round. But I think we kind of see the problem now that people just aren't really developing the skill set for an effective open space game because of the way the meta works. Takedowns tend to come in the cage. We see now with the Dagestanis, and part of their broader influence, I think, is now a lot of wrestlers are like kick wrestlers.
Yes.
Like the John Jones archetype, where they want to stay at long range and pick away with kicks.
Yeah.
And then if you try to step in, they'll smother you in the clinch, snuff out the space, and then drag you to the fence. So the opportunities for guys to build that kind of mid-range punching into open space takedowns are pretty slim in a lot of gyms anyway. And then they're just not really... I don't know what the training situation is like, but I imagine that a lot of the effort is going into cage work and back taking, and not so much dealing with an opponent in open space. So this is part of a bigger trend too, where ground and pound is getting like a lot worse, it seems.
So talk about that. I'm not sure I've actually caught that.
It seems like not a lot of top players nowadays have much of a process for ground and pound in open space. The one I'm thinking of, the big one, was GSP, where he had like a very coherent, excellent system of ground and pound.
Yes.
If you watch his fights, you can see him basically going through a flow chart. He would use his punches to move his opponent's hand around so he could get to control positions. Like in half guard, he'd punch up around the top of their head. They bring their hand up to block, and he swings into a crossface. So all of that is his passing and his ground and pound are linked together.
Yes.
And nowadays it seems like there's not a whole lot going on in full guard. You don't really see a lot of guys like using that to manipulate hand position and start a pass, and they tend to stall out a lot more. The one who I think bucks this trend is Arman Sarukian.
Mm-hmm.
He's excellent in those positions, but it seems like it's getting to be kind of a lost art.
Yeah, that's interesting. GSP Pen 2, whichever the one where he made BJ quit, is
Pen 2.
One of the greatest ground and pound performances of all time, I think, where it just looks like a scientific demonstration of how these things work. Of how to, punch from standing position, control an ankle, how to throw the legs by, create a pass, how to strike from half guard to distract from the legs and then pass further. Yeah, I'm not sure. I hearing you talk about it, I think that is absolutely the case, but I don't think I really noticed a significant deterioration in like the science
to me, it
of ground
seems
and
like
pound.
a lot of the most impactful ground and pound we see nowadays is on the fence. And of course, that's improved a lot with all the cage riding positions and such. And I think a big part of that too is that a lot of the guys that are really good at that have developed that system, just don't hit open space takedowns. So Shavkat Rakhmonov only does like body locks in the cage.
Right.
There's the Dagestani guys. So most fighters coming up nowadays are looking at them ruining guys on top, and they're not doing it.
Yeah.
Like in half guard or in open space.
Yeah, because there's no denying, like, everyone in MMA is now learning how to, like, cross wrist, handcuff people, and get them in, like, a leg right against the fence. Like, these things that are staples of the Khabib and Islam game and so many of these other Dagestani fighters are just staple MMA techniques now. They don't get as much love as the calf kicks when Joe Rogan's on commentary, but those handcuff riding positions are a lot more universal than they ever were before.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
It all relies on the fence. That's a shame to think about, because ground and pound is actually, like, to my mind, it's the thing that makes MMA MMA.
Yeah.
You know, like, you have Sanda and Sambo. There are not a ton, but there are other combat sports that blend wrestling or grappling and striking. I guess you have shoot boxing too, but ground and pound is like the exclusive province of MMA. And also, I guess, Eddie Bravo's failed combat jiu-jitsu thing. Which is just the stupidest idea for a sport ever.
Are they still doing that?
I don't think so. No, I think it had like 3 events. And you're like, okay, nobody likes this. We thought we would make jiu-jitsu more interesting, but in fact, we just made it seem sillier by saying that you can't hit each other until you're on the ground for some reason. But yeah, it's, see, I'm going to talk about this like an absolute rube, but I kind of thought we were seeing a new kind of cutting edge of top control and ground and pound starting about, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago now. Like when Bryce Mitchell got to the UFC, I looked at the way he handled top position. His preference for like dummy mount and 3/4 mount, all of these kind of, I think of them as like sticking an opponent in the transitional position. You know, like pick your poison approach to top control, where it's not so much about completely locking the person down as giving them 2 options, both of which ideally walk them into a trap. Giving them a limited freedom of movement so that then by striking them, you force them to take one of those options and expose themselves to like a finishing threat. But now that I think about it, I mean, certainly it didn't pan out for Bryce Mitchell the way I thought it probably would. And yeah, it's not really, it doesn't really figure into a lot of high level fights, those kinds of positions and that approach to top
there are,
control.
I think, a few guys who do quite good work with that, but yeah, it's not really, you don't see it at a high level. Like Logan Storley, a lot of folk style wrestlers, Ryan Bader at the end of his career was really good at it too, where they would pin with their lower body and sit on the legs. Sean Brady a little bit.
Yeah.
And then with your lower body immobilized, all you can do with your upper body is like try and push at their legs to get away, and they can smash you in the face.
Right. Yeah.
I think what it ultimately came down to with those guys is that they had some kind of process they could work with on top, but they weren't really good enough in transitions or at striking to win minutes on the feet and set up their takedowns on better fighters.
Yeah. So is there, so you're arguing basically that this has a lot to do with the fact that it's just easier. Well, is it easier or is it just on trend to be hitting your takedowns and ending up in your top control positions against the fence?
I think it is in big part a meta shift. I also think there probably weren't a lot of gyms that were equipped to give somebody both a very coherent inside boxing game, a good top control process on top that could deal with somebody turning over and fighting up. Because you either need to be a great folk style wrestler who can ride and break down strip posts and all that, or you need to have really good jiu-jitsu and be able to hang out on their back.
Or insane stamina like Marab, where it just doesn't matter if they keep getting back up.
Do it over and over again.
Right.
So I think a big part of it is with the Dagestani crowd and the pressure wrestlers now just kind of shifting the meta and everything falling into that. So I think that if fighters get better at countering that, we might see some more open space wrestling.
That's what I was going to say.
And those games start to develop.
Is the improvement of striking footwork and the improvement of generalship going to be the thing that simply forces wrestlers to get better at open space shots and open space top control? Like, because there's so much pressure is still the defining characteristic of basically all the best fighters in the world, whether they're wrestlers or not. Everyone is pressuring and swarming and throwing more than ever before. Is the answer to that when fighters finally figure out how to not lose simply because the opponent will not do anything but come forward.
Right. Imagine if they had to deal with a bunch of fights like Merab versus Yan 2 or Edwards versus Usman 3,
right,
where they're fighting a very strong clincher who will just step in and take away the space and then out clinch them and like beat them in transitions.
Right.
That's a situation I could think that would force a lot more open space wrestling. And you could see someone like Aljo having success with that, where like in his second fight with Yan, where he distracts them with punches and racks up volume, hits one of the takedowns when they're fighting on the inside, and then hangs out on his back for the rest of the round instead of having to give up the space and let him go back to work in transition.
Right. So that's interesting. I mean, Phil and I were talking about this a few weeks ago, like the possible diminishment of the wrestler as like a key MMA archetype. It seems weird to say because we do have guys like Merab and Islam, like some of the very best pound for pound fighters in the world are wrestlers. But we were talking about it from the perspective of like, it seems that MMA is getting fewer, like Division I wrestling prospects. There are fewer Americans and North Americans entering into MMA when that used to be just an incredibly stable talent pool for the sport. It's interesting to think about it also being a product of how MMA is done changing, that the meta is also shutting out wrestlers. But what do you think about, is there any truth to our notion that MMA, while it may also be getting harder for those wrestling styles, are we also actually getting fewer wrestlers, at least Western wrestlers, than we used to?
I'm not 100% sure about that. I haven't been following college wrestling or prospects quite as much as I used to. But one thing that a thought that brings up in me is that there are quite a few American wrestling prospects. They all train at ATT. And I think ATT is doing a bad job at building them.
How so? What do you think?
So at ATT, I think that's where Nickel trains, right? Bo Nickel. We also have Johnny Eblin, Archie Colgan, Cody Law. I think there are a few others, Dalton Rasta. So there's quite a few very athletic, talented wrestling prospects coming out of there.
Yeah.
And they all have very similar games, and they all lack a lot of coherence and depth. If I had to pinpoint what's going wrong with them, I think that they're being built to have very broad but shallow games.
Yeah.
If you look at them, they all kind of fight pretty similar, where they have some basic boxing and kicking skills on the outside. They have like one layer deep transitions where they'll do a level change overhand, or they'll shoot the guy down blocks or underhooks, and then they come up with a knee or something like that.
Right.
There's nothing really deeper than that. And I think what might be it is that there's like a focus on breadth over depth. Where if you look at someone like GSP, he didn't have as well-rounded a striking arsenal as they do. Right. His right hand was terrible. He could barely throw it at all.
Yeah, it took him. Do you remember when he went to Freddie Roach and Freddie was like, I taught him a left hook? He's going to start crushing people. That was like 7 years
later. He cracks Bisping with it.
Yeah, he got Bisping. Hey, it panned out. But that was already like 6 or 7 years into his career. He's like, Freddie Roach taught him to do something that wasn't a jab.
He had like three weapons on the feet.
Yep.
And they have a lot more, but none of them are sharp, none of them are deep, and none of them lead into anything deeper. Right. Whereas GSP, even with his limited arsenal, he had so much to build off.
Definitely.
He had a couple basic, there was coherence between his few basic attacks, and he could cycle through them, feint them, show them into another attack,
right,
and they would all look the same. And then opponents they'd be looking at him change levels. They don't know if he's going to spring up into a jab, shoot in on their hips, or what. Whereas they're not able to sell that depth with a single weapon or two, right, and build off it into more. And I think that is like
if you're going to master anything on the feet, it should probably be the jab.
Yeah.
Is one lesson to take away from that. If you're going to have a very thin striking game, get really good at using your lead hand.
One of the points I made in my article on takedown entries is that the setting up takedowns with a jab works really well for fighters with comfortable pocket boxing. If you can pick and prod at the guy and see what he's going to do, gather information, and find out what his reactions are, then the jab is perfect because you can get in close, you can force him to react, and then counter it with a takedown. But for fighters who aren't comfortable on the inside, it's hard to make that work because if you're just jabbing into a takedown, that's not in itself a great setup. The penetration isn't as deep. When you step forward with a jab and you move your lead leg ahead,
right,
how much distance you can close there is quite limited. Whereas fighters who aren't comfortable in the pocket tend to do better with their right hands as a setup. Ryan Bader was a really good example of this.
Yeah.
He was not comfortable at all in the pocket, just really not capable of doing those kind of slick reactive takedown setups.
Yeah.
But he was big, he was strong, he was fast, and he could explode forward with his right hand. So he would do that a couple times, then explode forward with his right hand, but this time bring his rear leg with it and just shoot a blast double on you. This is a really good setup for Merab Dvalishvili too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of like useful for different types of wrestlers. But the ATT thing, I really kind of think is influencing the meta for wrestlers quite strongly now because they just have so many of them, where it seems they've built up a pathway for collegiate wrestlers to come into MMA through them, but I don't think they're really being built up to be elite fighters.
Yeah, or at least not elite fighters whose games are built to enable their wrestling.
Yeah.
So who's a current, not a prospect, but a current established ATT fighter? Because ATT has basically got the best or longest pedigree of any top gym right now.
Do they have anyone around now that they like built rather than guys that came there later?
Oh, that's a good question. It is like a finishing school for a lot of fighters.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. I might pull up there.
There was Poirier, but
yeah. Also, I would not say that Poirier's game was particularly well designed to make him a super effective wrestler.
No.
It's like the archetype for ATT fighters who do wrestle seems to be like the takedown is simply an option, which is available. Yeah. It's a thing you can mix in, but it's not something where if you choose that you have to out-wrestle the person, that's your key to winning the fight, that you're going to be able to do that easily.
Their top games seem to be pretty similar in that they're like kind of one layer deep with transitions. Like they're all very good folk style wrestlers, but they don't seem to have developed much more than that. So they'll get guys down against the cage and they'll do the folk style control positions, but they don't seem to have like advanced much beyond what you already learn in college wrestling with that. Like they're not really having success immobilizing guys with their lower body and then hitting them very hard. Like all of the Dagestani guys do very well, even the lower level ones. It's more just like they're just kind of wrestling.
Yeah, I'm looking through their roster, at least a selection of it on Wikipedia. I'm not sure if any of these fighters are homegrown ATT fighters.
I don't think so.
It's not. I don't think any of these. Like how long ago did Bo Nichols start training there? He might be considered a homegrown fighter, considering that his first several years of MMA, I'm not sure he was really learning. He didn't seem to be learning a ton of great MMA skills. And let me ask you, actually, Ryan, you're a bona fide hater. You and the rest of Kyle McLaughlin's progeny. What did you think of Bo Nichols' last fight?
I saw that he won by head kick, saw that it went like 14 minutes and didn't watch it.
No, you can't tell me that. I want you to watch it, all right? And let me know on Twitter or something. And then 3 weeks later,
I will, but man, I watched like 3 minutes of the Paul Craig fight and
well, see, that's perfect. You've watched 3 minutes of the Paul Craig fight. At that point, you've got it. You've seen the whole Paul Craig fight. Just picture what you saw, except it gets slightly worse because nothing changes for the rest of the fight. And then watch
It really does speak to what we're saying with the lack of coherence,
Yes.
because
Oh, totally.
he does the whole kick wrestler thing, but his kicks aren't sharp enough to make guys need to close
Right.
in on his wrestling.
And then, of course, he fought De Ridder, which was the first time he'd ever faced anyone whom he was wary of taking down, and it turned out there was nothing else.
Yeah.
Like a guy
you can't be getting out clinched by the Dutch like that.
Right. A guy he was wary about taking down, he was therefore forced to strike with him, and De Ridder, because he had no fear of the takedown, had absolutely no reason to fear the striking and just demolished him. When you get a chance, watch that fight with, not Buchecha,
Adolfo Vieira, was it?
Yeah, Vieira. And, because I did see a lot of people saying they were disappointed. I think, Joanna Dangerfield on Twitter was like, yeah, Bo Nickal's still shit. I thought it was a big improvement. Very big. And
what did you like about it?
His striking actually made sense. It was a fight he largely beat Vieira with his jab. He actually controlled the distance. And this was jabbing in open stance, by the way, for a lot of the fight.
It does sound a lot more encouraging than the normal
alone,
kick wrestling thing.
That alone is so much better than wanging left hands at Paul Craig, and then at a certain point they just stop landing, and then the fight kind of stops happening, but keeps going for another 11 minutes regardless. So I thought it was a big... In which case, if you consider that all of that has basically come as a result of Bo Nickal now being at ATT, maybe he should count as one of their actual viable homegrown fighters. Because they do seem
I think he's been training there for quite a while.
Okay.
I can't seem to find out.
Maybe it's up to Bo Nickal individually. Maybe he found some other coaches he wanted to work with, or maybe it just changed his mindset. It did remind me of when
it looks like I think he might have been training there before he started MMA.
Oh, wow. He was just in the wrestling room maybe as a sparring partner?
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe it was simply that the game he showed against Vieira was available in some way, but Henry Cejudo style, he just was... There was no compulsion to learn it, to really gain an understanding of the other parts of MMA, because it wasn't necessary for him to win.
There's also a certain quality of athlete that can just kind of do whatever they want to a guy like Adolfo Vieira.
Yeah. Precisely. If you're athletic enough to be an elite fighter, you can still get away up to a pretty damn high level with an incredibly thin game. But
now that we're kind of going over this, the thought I have now is that the guys who developed that coherence really well that we're talking about, for a lot of their early career, they were just rolling scrubs. There, in a lot of those elite fighters, there wasn't a whole lot of competition for them until they, later in their career when they stepped up and fought somebody difficult. Whereas guys like Bo Nickal are getting pretty quickly thrown into to serious fights against serious fighters. Yeah. And even on the regional scenes nowadays, there's a lot of fighters who are, even if they're not at athletic parity with you, even if they're not really a threat to beat you,
right,
they're at least competent, and they're going to force you into playing your A game and doing the thing you're best at, rather than trying to spend some time developing other skills. So it might just be harder for fighters who are really good at wrestling, and more athletic and can beat some guys on the ground to develop comfort in the pocket. Does it make sense to stand with a journeyman who can kind of box a bit, and he's jabbing, he's feinting, and this is kind of difficult, and I'm a little bit stressed out, or should I just take him down?
Right. Yeah, I think that's absolutely makes sense.
And then when you do the whole just take him down thing, and then you start fighting good fighters who are athletic, they have coherent games, they're UFC level, then that doesn't really work so well anymore.
Yeah. It can be good at the start of your career to eat some simple carbs, some easily digestible food, so that you are actually able to experiment and develop, rather than being in the deep end right away. I mean, I know we're talking about Bo Nickal, we're talking about guys like Paul Craig and what's his name? Zane Simon's favorite fighter, Cody, whatever that guy's name is, who has one idea for every fight, and that's all. These
Doesn't
aren't
ring a bell?
Yeah, yeah, that sounds like a million MMA fighters. But these aren't the elite of the elite, but they're fighters with lots of meaningful experience. And in some cases, they are fighters with a lot of natural athleticism. That doesn't go for Paul Craig necessarily, but you wouldn't want a guy like Bo Nickel probably could have beaten Paul Craig in that version of Paul Craig in his first MMA fight. He might have got suckered into a submission on the ground. But he probably could have manufactured the exact same fight much earlier in his career.
Mm-hmm.
The trouble is it was fairly late into his career. I mean, he's still a young and developing fighter, but it was I don't know, like 7, 8, 10 fights into his career or whatever. And he's essentially still playing the game that he was playing at the very beginning. Because I think of the level of competition. There's just no room to relax and experiment when your opponents are all real fighters.
When I was wrestling in high school, in my first tournament, I was terrible, and I went up to wrestle a guy that was way bigger than me, and he was super lanky. Felt like I was fighting John Jones. Mm-hmm. But he put me in a cradle in like 30 seconds, and his coach was like, "Wait, let him go, get some experience." Yeah. And then he let me go and just took me down like 3 times and teched me. And like having a lot of fights like that at the start of your career is pretty helpful.
Yeah. Wow, what an experience for you. You got to be the professional opponent to this other wrestler. Did that hurt terribly to hear his coach while it's happening telling him to play with his food?
No, it just made me want to get better.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's good for you too, but definitely good for him.
I could do that to other people.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah. Wrestling and MMA. I think maybe I do think this is only anecdotal. It will be very difficult, I think, to compile like a statistical database of like the number of wrestling prospects that we get in, even if you just limited it to the UFC. I think it would be quite difficult to ascertain if we are getting fewer wrestlers than we used to. But I am attracted to the idea that there is maybe a bright future for wrestling and MMA once the striking meta finally adapts to pressure.
Yeah.
Because it still hasn't, except, again, at the cutting edge, at the very top of the pile, guys like Ilya Tupuria and Max Holloway, even Islam. Like, nobody's out there trying to out-wrestle Islam, but I think his striking game is good enough that he could beat a pressure wrestler with his striking. At the highest level, we are seeing fighters who don't lose simply because the opponent is coming forward.
Yeah.
But for the most part, that rule holds true.
I think Topuria and Volkanovski are good examples of fighters that it might be easier for like a GSP type open space wrestler with a very jabby guy to get, rather than like the pressure wrestlers that have to back them up to the cage.
Why do you say
and
that?
Like Chad Mendez taking Volkanovski down at will. And like, of course, Mendez didn't have the top game to do much with it.
Yeah.
But there's avenues there that aren't available for guys that need to pressure them back.
Explain that. What do you mean? How would a GSP type get through on a Topuria in a way that I'm trying to think of
for Volkanovski, the big thing is that he is incredibly strong and good in the clinch.
Yeah.
So if you're walking him back to the cage and you got to body lock him or hit a single leg there, there's a good chance he's just going to beat your ass there. Topuria, I think, is just a lot very difficult to pressure compared to most MMA fighters.
Yep.
The way he moves backward when he's forced backward.
Yep. He
keeps himself in position to hit you and hurt you at all times. He's good at moving out. He's good enough defensively that he doesn't have to take a lot of ground.
Yep.
So he doesn't have to run backwards at your face.
Distance well, controls the center line even when he's retreating. You have to work super hard to even get in on him when he's retreating.
Exactly. But if you can jab in, draw him into an exchange, and then set up the takedown while he steps in, or while he's reacting to your jab, then that cuts out a lot of the work involved. I think Bryce Mitchell took him down a couple times, but I don't remember what they were. I think he might have hit like single legs or high crotches.
I
think at least some of them were in open space too.
So basically the answer is to become more like Islam Makhachev. To set up your takedowns.
Yeah, that usually is the answer.
Yeah. To set up your takedowns the way you would set up strikes. You know, whether every entry is at that split step single leg entry or not, the key when eventually, I'm saying this as if it's a certainty, which I hope it is, when eventually striking footwork gets good enough that fighters can consistently win fights without having to pressure, then the key to start wrestling those fighters would be to take them down in exchanges, to make the takedown part of a striking combination, essentially.
I think that's the best way to develop serious threats, just a couple serious threats that lead into coherent, distinct takedown entries.
Yeah.
And then once they adapt to that and start trying to defend, then of course the elite fighters can use those reactions to set up other stuff to operate in transition. Absolutely. Like how Demetrius Johnson would like feint a takedown, step into another takedown, and then knee you when you try to defend it,
right,
and punch you in the face and then like back on the hips.
So you've always got your eye on fighters that I've never heard of, Ryan. What are some interesting wrestlers that people should check out, that I should check out for that matter, that maybe help us to understand these ideas?
A lot of the best wrestlers in Russia aren't so good at the setting up the takedowns part. One guy I really like is Islam Omarov. He's ACA's champion at featherweight and one of the best featherweights in the world right now. He is mostly a power wrestler. He has very good chain wrestling, and he can shoot from far away and still end up on top. He has a crushing top game, but he has some unique things on the feet too. His fight with Bibert Tumanov is a really great example. Bibert Tumanov, Albert Tumanov's little brother, is an absolute beast, super powerful boxer. He's much more dangerous in the pocket than his brother Albert. And Omarov was fighting off the back foot and playing the role of an outfighter in that fight. So he was distracting with long-range jabs, drawing out punches, and circling away. And he would use that to get in on his takedowns. There was one moment where he hit a really nice high crotch lift and just like picked Tumanov up and yeeted him onto the ground. Mm-hmm. Another guy I really like, you've probably heard me talk about him at some point, is Edward Vartanian.
Yes.
He's one of the top guys in ACA, ACB, going back about 10 years. They had a really great lightweight division quite a while ago with him, Ali Bagov, and Abdulaziz Abdulwahabov. They all fought each other, and those fights are really good. Vartanian is one of the best transitional fighters I've ever seen in MMA.
Oh.
And he's not a super overpowering wrestler in the same way that like Islam or those guys are, where they can just shoot from afar, get in on the leg, and chain wrestle until you're down on the ground.
Right. He
set up all his best takedowns with strikes, and the way he did it was just unlike almost anything I've seen in MMA. He did a lot of those really slick outside trips and foot sweeps that you saw from guys like TJ Dillashaw, where they would throw a long right hand and let their rear leg drift forward and then hook around yours and trip you out as you're trying to back away from the right hand.
The Lyoto Machida Osotogari move.
He had some lovely foot sweeps like that too. He hit one against Damir Ismagulov in their like weird little hybrid rules fights in Russia, where he threw the right hand and then like just took out his foot as he was stepping back. A lot of really interesting setups for takedowns and transitions in those fights. He's really great at striking off the transition too. So when guys defend his takedown, he'll like pop up with a knee, distract them upstairs with a couple punches, and then change levels again.
Nice. All right. I have to check that. I have to check Vartanian out. I think I've only seen and I can't even remember what fight it was. I think I just in passing watched one.
Was it the Shabley fight? That one was popular on Twitter for a while.
Probably. Yeah. Just to double back real quick before we wrap up, you're telling me that Albert Tumanov's younger brother is named Biebert?
Have you not seen Biebert Tumanov?
Do they have a even younger brother called Siebert?
Dude, you gotta watch Biebert. He's like very small, but has incredibly huge muscles, and he just vaporizes guys.
Oh.
He's so much fun.
I will have to watch him.
You will love him.
Yeah, I have to watch him. Sounds like he might be a contender for the Patrick Wyman Memorial Award for explosive muscularity.
Oh, absolutely.
If one of the first things you mentioned
muscularity,
about a guy,
just training in sniffing distance of that guy.
I know one man, sadly deceased, who would love to be in sniffing distance of him. R.I.P. Dr. Pat.
R.I.P.
But thank you very much, Ryan, for joining me. I know people listening to this will be like, where the hell was the episode this week? It's late, but hey, it was Christmas. Phil was unavailable. He's on holiday, I think, in one of the British colonies that is still, powered by slave labor and stuff like that. I think he's in, I can't remember. They got some of these colonies that I don't even recognize the country names. But I want to thank you for joining me for this, Ryan, because you know more about wrestling than me, but I find the place of wrestling in MMA to be super fascinating. We should do this again sometime and focus more on ground and pound. Cause
that would be really cool.
It's not something I think I understand nearly as well as I would like, but as I said, it is like the identifying characteristic of this sport. And I think it should be developed. It should be much more of a science than it seems to be for most MMA fighters.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. And I will tell people once again to check out Ryan's Substack. It is excellent. He publishes so much more consistently than I do, even when I am being even remotely consistent. And you post long, detailed, and well-written breakdowns, and you should check out his latest one. It is something in the neighborhood of 17,000 words.
Yeah, like 14,000 or something.
I mean, it's a Substack post with chapters. Not just headings, but it has a legit table of contents and chapters that you can navigate to. It's exhaustive. It's a really fascinating read, and that's mixingmartialarts.com.
The second part of that article will be coming out probably about a week from the time this episode is released.
Awesome.
I talk a little bit about shifting entries, how TJ Dillashaw would switch stances to set up his takedowns, and that thing Matthias Gamrot does where he gets dropped and then pretends he was going for a takedown the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Love that move.
I actually do talk about that.
Nice. Nice. So thank you, Ryan. Find us on social media, folks. I'm at Boxing Bush on Twitter. Ryan is much more active on Twitter. His handle is at Ryan A. Wag MMA. Is that right?
That's right.
And definitely check out his Substack. Heavy Hands will be back in just a few days with Dr. Phil McKenzie. So look forward to that episode. It should come out just a couple days after this one. But thanks again, Ryan. A pleasure talking to you.
Thanks for having me on, Connor. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And I suppose if you came here today for the finer points of leg...
face wrestling.
Yeah, well... I was going to say leg grabbing, but let's stick with face wrestling. If you came here today for the finer points of face wrestling, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.